We ready to go, Lynn?
Yeah, I think we're ready. Let's go,
All
Tanya.
right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for Leading with Agility. My name is Tanya Guadiz. I'm a director of consulting with Improving out of our Dallas office. A little bit about me. I started my career as a developer and quickly realized that was not where I wanted to be. I eventually moved into roles such as testing, systems, and business analysis, and finally transitioned into being more of a liaison between the business and technology, where I find I really enjoy working with the business to figure out their problems and their goals, and then how we can help them as a technology team. And as a consultant, which is where I spent the bulk of my career, I frequently go into clients without having any official title or authority. And that is why this topic is near and dear to my heart. Lynn?
Yeah, and I'm Lynn Barrett. And as Tanya and I were putting this together, we realized we both started in the same place, software developers. I actually love software development, but like Tanya, I felt like there was a need for a liaison between the business and technology. So I came onto the project side, and I've been a consultant for most of my career at different places. I've also been an employee, so I've seen consultants come in and work with us. Neither time did I feel like I had authority, but I did feel like I was meant to lead. And so that's what kind of prompted us to come up with this talk today.
All right, thanks, Lynn. And so we have told you a bit about who we are. And now let's talk about why we're here today. Thank you all for joining us over your lunch hour. And I know that it's a great conversation to have about leadership. And that's what we want to talk about today, is leadership and leading without authority. As most of you know, leadership behavior significantly shapes an organization's culture, and it has a direct impact on an organization's performance, including profit and loss, employee retention, engagement, and the ability to achieve goals. Yet, despite this direct correlation between leadership, culture, and results, there are many people who are in leadership positions who lack the soft skills that are needed to promote team unity, lower turnover, increase engagement, and achieve results. Companies have started to recognize this, and they know that a change is needed. So there is a shift away from a traditional boss, and this is providing an opportunity for all of us to demonstrate our leadership skills from within our team, regardless of our role or our title. It's no longer about the person with the corner office and that swagger. You know, the person who is the center of attention, who's bold or brash. They behave in a very confident or maybe even an arrogant manner. I would guess that we're all thinking of someone we know who fits that description. Lynn, does it make you think of anyone?
Oh, for sure. The CEO of rock and roll, which would be Mick Jagger.
Okay, I thought maybe you would go with a former manager or boss or something, but you know what? We can work with Mick Jagger because honestly, Mick has embodied swagger for over 5 decades as the front man for one of the biggest bands in history. And he could be equated to that C-suite leader, the one that gets all the attention. But if we think about it, do you think that the Rolling Stones would have achieved the same level of success that they have if Mick was making all of the decisions by himself without any other input? I don't think so. Without the original band members, Bill, Brian, Keith, Charlie, and their producer, Andrew, they wouldn't have many of their greatest hits. Because successful leadership isn't just about one person. Successful leadership requires collaboration, humility, and empowerment to create music that resonates with audiences. Today, instead of focusing on the person with that C-suite swagger, during this session, when Lynn and I talk about leader, we're not referring to somebody who has the title or the position of authority. When we say leader, we mean all of us. Every one of us has the ability to lead from wherever we are. We all have the ability to use our skills to get things done working with others in a team, even when we have no direct authority over them. Because Agile leadership is a mindset, not a title. And while discussing Agile leadership is always a good time, I mean, who doesn't enjoy it? I know Lynn and I do. We wanted to make this session even more fun and add a little bit of entertainment value. So we have a game. Agile Beats is similar to the take a shot when you hear a certain word in corporate bingo, like win-win or synergize, or when you see Taylor Swift on the Jumbotron in an NFL game. But unfortunately, there are no shots, and there's no Taylor Swift today. For this game, what we'd like you to do is keep track of any band, artist, song title, or song lyric that are referenced during the session. Just the number. You don't need the specifics. We don't need you to note that you've heard Mick Jagger and Taylor Swift. Just so far, you've heard 2. And whoever catches them all, or at least gets the closest, will earn our respect. That's RESPECT, and there's 3 for you. And a prize. So, Lynn, do we have prizes today?
I think you just said what our prize was. You will earn our respect. So we're glad you're here with us today. We just want to have a little fun. We know it's lunchtime. You're taking your time. So, but it's an important message, and we're glad you're here.
Yeah. So join us on our journey today, and don't stop believing, because you can learn how to unlock the qualities needed to demonstrate your leadership potential within your Agile team.
All right, as we're getting started here, we want to know what you're thinking. So if you want to drop something in the chat about what traits you think are crucial for a good leader. We'll give it a few minutes. Oh, good. Active listening, good one.
So we've heard active listening. Any others popping up, Lynn?
Curiosity. Oh, courage. Love that one. Accountability. Nice. So these are all really great, and you can keep them coming if you want. We'll have a whole chat full of them. We're going to talk about some of those today as we move on. And so stay tuned. Appreciate your participation in those.
And I would say those are great examples. And let's look at this from another perspective as well. Have you ever thought about the difference between a leader and a manager? So think about managers and leaders that you've worked with. Does this quotation resonate with you? Can you think of somebody who you've worked with who is more of the boss than a leader? And we put together a list of some differences between a leader and a manager. And I will say this is not an all-inclusive list. This is just some things that came to mind. We won't be going through this entire list. This is more for reference here. And if we were to cover each of these, it would take well more than an hour. So instead, we decided to focus on just a few key characteristics of a leader, and then some actions that you can take to help hone your skills in specific areas. So when I think of great leaders, people who I want on my team or who I'd love to work with again, I think of leaders who are adaptable. Leaders embrace change. They don't shy away from challenges, and instead they use those challenges as opportunities to learn, grow, and innovate. Great Agile leaders also recognize the importance of adapting quickly when needed. If a problem comes up, they know how to adjust their approach or find a creative solution. Leaders are also relationship builders. They prioritize building trust and fostering collaboration. Agile leaders know that how important collaboration is for successful projects. So they help foster an environment where team members work together effectively. And they focus on building relationships between team members by creating a trust-based environment. That means every person on the team feels comfortable sharing ideas without fear of criticism or judgment. Leaders are also empowering. They provide team members with what they need to do their job, to complete a project or task successfully. And great Agile leaders understand others' strengths and expertise, and they encourage their team members to use those diverse talents to achieve team goals. Finally, and what I will say, in my opinion, is probably one of the greatest traits of a leader, is that true leaders are part of the team. They're not watching from backstage or waiting in the wings. We think about what it takes to make a concert happen. It's not only the band. To pull off a live concert night after night in different cities requires truckers to get the equipment to the right place, stagehands, sound engineers, lighting technicians, equipment handlers, the tour managers, security, the venue staff that takes the tickets, sells the concessions, the merchandise sellers, and many more that I've probably forgotten. Imagine the collaboration and communication that it requires among these team members. With various tasks, such as setting up a stage or tuning the instruments, leadership will emerge from within this group based on their skills, their knowledge, and their willingness to contribute. It's not based on a hierarchy of authority. This is similar to an Agile team, where each person brings their diverse knowledge and displays that leader mindset to ensure that the show goes on. So Lynn, how do we see these traits in action in Agile leadership?
Well, Tanya, first of all, you said a word a few minutes ago, top of this list right here, mindset. So it is a mindset, and those in the Agile community hear this quite a bit. Are you doing Agile or are you being Agile? And leaders are being Agile. And when you are being Agile, you start noticing it in everything. For us, we picked a rock concert, which is, it was kind of interesting if you think about, like Kanye said, all the things that go into it to make it happen every single night. But what does Agile leadership look like in practice if you're not the headliner, if you're not the CEO in a company, or if you're not the rock star with the vision? But other leaders make it happen, and they bring this vision to fruition. Well, they're not backstage. They're embracing the Agile principles, and they are bringing satisfaction to the client and excellence to the organization. And they're taking ownership to help break down silos and increase shared understanding and quicker delivery, which is really important in Agile. And remember that a change is going to come. So be flexible. Agile leaders are flexible, whether it's a change in the set list or it's a change in the market. You'd be ready to help build a new path to continue the journey. So imagine the perfect concert that you've been to, where the band has set the mood and energized the audience. Now think about that band. I mean, what are they doing? They're delivering often to stakeholders. They're delivering, each song is an increment that they are delivering. They have to be collaborating, they have to be motivated, and the players are working in harmony to create streamlined, elegant solutions. It's extremely energizing, not only to the band, but to everyone around them, their stakeholders. And we have to remember that respect and reflection, the team refines their sound in our little over here, and they play encore after encore. All right, so while we're talking about encore after encore, how can we foster that sustainability? Because no one wants to be a one-hit wonder, and no team wants to burn out and fade away. So learning to lead is like learning to play an instrument. It can be taught, the music can be taught, but you have to practice and develop some sort of mastery. And if you're in Agile, you've heard shuhari. That's kind of what we do, right? We learn something, we try to master it, and then we break it and make it our own. And so we're going to keep with our theme of at every level. Is that just leaders? No, it's everywhere. It's all the way through the organization. So think about where you might show your leadership. You might be an individual contributor and you're doing pair programming, problem solving. Maybe you're mentoring someone new to the team. Or maybe you're at the team level. You're an active listener. You are valuing all opinions. You're creating safe spaces. and healthy challenges every day for the team. Or maybe you're a manager and you're going to set the tempo. Delegating authority, providing team autonomy, guiding and supporting through some really tough audiences sometimes. And if something isn't working, what do? Shake it off and welcome change. So as you can see, it takes a large group to create a product or a production, as we're referring to now. Bon Jovi may be living on a prayer, but it takes more than prayers to give the audience something to believe in. All right, so we've talked a little bit about things other than the challenges right now. It sounds pretty easy so far, but as we all know, if you've worked in this space, it's not. So let's hit on a few of the challenges. First of all, big one for me, resistance to change. Everybody wants to move forward and try something different, but changing can be really difficult. And it's like a barricade, it prevents innovation. So the Beatles, they challenged the status quo and they changed pop music forever. And that's why we remember them. Had they just been another band, it might have been there was that group in the 60s. I don't quite remember their name, but no, they were change makers. And agile leaders that embrace change, they encourage innovation and experimentation. They're early adopters, trailblazers, and they gain a competitive advantage. All right, let's talk about misaligned vision and goals. Think about rock stars with misaligned visions and goals. How many groups you say, oh yeah, that band, they had great music, but boy, the interesting story is their breakup. Not so great for business. You don't want the interesting story to be your breakup, even if you had a good product at one time. So agile leaders collaborate across teams and organizations with open communication, feedback, and engagement. And last, we'll talk about ineffective communication. It distorts the sound, like one of those amps that speaks in your ear, right? Agile leaders encourage clear, concise messaging, and they set a positive example for others. So we discussed traits and challenges. Let's talk about some actions that we can take.
All right. As Lynn mentioned, change is hard and there is often resistance to change. So making people a part of the change often makes it easier for them to accept and adapt to that change. Then you might ask yourself, as a team member, how do I do this? How do I help people accept change? And I will say one way is to lead by example. And leading by example is not only being that early adopter of a tool or a process. Sometimes leading by example means allowing yourself to be vulnerable or uncomfortable. I previously worked for a company that was acquired by a much larger financial institution. And during this 15-month transition period, which the two companies were merging, the uncertainty was stressful for every member of my team. We all wondered, would we have jobs? If we did have a job when this was over, how would it change? Who would our new manager be? And lots of other questions that just constantly churned through our minds. Those questions and the uncertainty were the elephant in the room that no one wanted to address. I think we all thought if we didn't talk about it, maybe we wouldn't have to accept that change. There was our resistance. We wouldn't have to admit our fears. But that wasn't good for anyone, and it was impacting the team. So to help others, I stepped out of my comfort zone and shared that I was struggling as well. I was demonstrating my vulnerability by allowing them to see that, yes, I felt uncertain and there was stress. And some days that impacted my attitude and my ability to get things done, which some of them had noticed. But starting that conversation, being the first one to step forward and be vulnerable, allowed the other team members to share their concerns as well. And through the course of that, we gave each other a safe space where we could have these conversations without worrying about what other people were thinking. It also allowed us to share some thoughts about possibly changing that mindset and becoming acceptors of the change and helping others lead through it. Starting to look at, it's a bigger company. Maybe there are more opportunities for us. Maybe this isn't all bad, but part of that being vulnerable and helping others through it allowed them to start accepting the change. And I know, Lynn, you've had similar examples in your work history.
Yes, actually, I've been a part of, an acquisition before, and I know how stressful that can be, and how vulnerable you feel during that time period. Um, and I had an example too, a little bit different take on vulnerability. I worked with a team that was, this is a while back, when I went into a company where they were learning Agile. So the team had very little experience. They were just learning what a backlog was. However, the execs were, Agile is one of those things that just turns around your company, turns on a dime. So their expectations were very high. And the leader that I was working with, I had a good relationship with him. And he knew that it was going to take more than that. So we set out on, getting the team used to what that Agile events were, and what it was going to look like and feel like, and building a backlog. And we knew that it would be a little bit slow going, and so did the leader. We went through all the right things to start our first sprint, which we did. And our first sprint, we didn't get anything delivered. We did, however, learn a lot about each other. We learned about setting agreements. And when I talked to the leader that I'd been working with, he understood all that. He thought that really the team did make some good strides. He wanted to come in and give him a pep talk. However, his background was in sports. So his idea of a pep talk was to go into a bunch of developers and say, well, do you feel like you failed? And I just could see everyone on screen's face kind of melting, like it really felt like they had made progress. And did we deliver? No. Is that the most important thing? Yes. Delivering working software is extremely important, but we learned a lot of lessons. And as he went on and I saw the team kind of melting, I thought I have to, it's time to stop this and say something. So I respectfully asked him, to just listen for a minute. And I said, the team has learned a lot over the past 2 weeks. And no, we did not deliver, but I think we're on such a good path to do it. Talked a little bit about the things that we had done, got the team to even talk a little bit about it. And he was saying that, yes, he was letting his sports side come into a situation where maybe that's not the way to go. And what came out of that was a team that was really motivated and willing to work together. They appreciated the support, because part of being a good leader is being courageous, and it's not always easy. Sometimes you think, I either just did a really good thing, or maybe I lost my job. So I think we've all had those days, like I felt so brave right there, but it was a tough thing to do, to stand in front of people and be that vulnerable. So we're going to talk a little bit more about vulnerability now. For me, presenting in public in front of you, or in live, is extremely vulnerable. And the thought of someone like a CEO presenting in front of a company just kind of takes my breath away, as well as someone like Mick Jagger singing in front of 10,000, 20,000, maybe even 100,000 people. And, I could do that right now. I could sing for you. Maybe that would make me feel better. Maybe it would, show you how vulnerable I am, but I won't, because I can't sing. And I think that one thing that's really important about being vulnerable is having boundaries. So you don't want people to feel uncomfortable. I definitely don't want you to feel uncomfortable, and you've just eaten as well. So there's a whole lot of reasons for me not to do this. But let's think about some of your leaders. Think about Tanya's example. There was a leader at the top of that chain that was having to give that news of, we're being acquired, or things are going to change, companies being sold, and they're feeling it too. And as they present themselves with courage to the team of, hey, I'm not even sure what my job's going to look like later on down the road. That's really vulnerable. It makes them human, which is great, and more approachable. So that is really important for a leader as well. When they can openly discuss their limitations. Maybe you're working on something and they're supposed to be the leader that is leading this great effort, but they really don't have a lot of knowledge about what you're building, how you're building. Not only is this a great opportunity to build a wonderful relationship with this leader when they're, feeling a little bit vulnerable, like, yeah, I really don't know how this works, but it's a great time for the dev team, or for anyone else, business, dev, anybody, to step in and say, hey, why don't we set up some time with you? Because we'd really like for you to understand this. I think you could have some good insight on this for us. And it's always appreciated by everyone else. It makes us all smarter. And sometimes a leader might share some personal information with you. Maybe they're going through a rough time. We all just went through the pandemic together. There were rough times. And sometimes somebody might have seemed a little different. Maybe something, they seem to be struggling with something. Sometimes they share that information with you. So as long as they keep their boundaries, that's great that they can show that vulnerability, and maybe you can help them through something. You can help lead them. All right, next we're going to talk about live with integrity. Do you walk your talk? Are your actions and your words aligned? And sometimes that's very difficult. You might be telling people, I'll always have your back, I'll always have your back. And then all of a sudden you have no job. You've been told your job has been eliminated. You can't have their back anymore. So you have good intent, but they may question your integrity when really you're trying your best to keep it intact. And last, but something that's really, really important to us in improving is trust and encouraging trust, accountability, respect, courage, admitting errors. These are all behaviors that relate to trust. And something else that we talk about quite a bit is there's a cost, there's a dollar amount that goes with trust. So if you walk into a new engagement, or maybe it's an existing engagement where everybody's like, well, let's double check her work. Or, maybe those are times you need to reach out and say, hey, is there something going on as to why you feel like this needs to be double checked? They might find out that actually, and this is something that I think we've all encountered before, maybe somebody seems like they're not doing everything they can, but then you find out that they're being allocated between 4 different groups. It's like, oh gosh, that's a terrible thing. We need to find out how to get you so that you can be your best as well. All right, so Tanya, we know that trust is critical to building relationships, and Agile leaders are relationship builders. So what other areas are important to foster team relationships?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. It's almost like we planned this. I would say that, in addition to that trust relationship builder, communication plays an essential role in fostering healthy relationships and building trust. And often when we think of people who have top-notch communication skills, we think of those powerful speakers, people who are persuasive and charismatic, such as a band frontman or a CEO. But I would say that's an incomplete or inaccurate picture, because to be a great communicator, you need to develop skills in all areas of communication, not just speaking, but writing and listening as well. Because effective communication is the ability to convey your thoughts and ideas and information to others, but it involves not only expressing yourself, but also actively listening, interpreting, and then responding in a way that builds that mutual connection. And it encompasses both the content of the message as well as the manner in which it's delivered. So think about things such as your facial expression, your body language, and your tone. And tone isn't just for speaking. It comes across in writing as well. Have you ever opened an email, read it, and thought it had a bit of a tone? I know I have. Like, you can almost hear the person's frustration or annoyance or maybe excitement. I don't know, but it's something to keep in mind, because that is part of your communication. And then finally, effective communication requires the ability to adapt to your specific situation and your audience. And by honing your communication skills, you can help foster positive relationships, resolve conflicts, and influence decisions and inspire actions. If we look at our workplace today, we are largely remote or hybrid. And great communication skills can mean the difference between a team that is connected and working well together to achieve a goal, and a team who fails to collaborate, doesn't stay aligned, and fails to achieve their goals. So let's look at some strategies that you can incorporate into your daily interactions to improve your communication skills and avoid a communication breakdown, and become a more effective leader within your Agile team. First, focus your message. Organize your thoughts before speaking or writing, and use simple, direct language to convey your message. So even during, say, impromptu conversations, whether that be in the break room or somebody pops up an instant message, it's okay to take a few seconds, a few minutes to think about what you want to say and organize your thoughts before you respond. And if you aren't ready to have that conversation right then, acknowledge it and plan for a different time. You know what? I need to think about this. Let's get back together on Friday and talk about it. It's better to have that focus message than to just blurt out random thoughts. Also, make sure your message is specific and concise. And finally, understand your audience. As John Bon Jovi said, I've seen a million faces and I've rocked them all, because Bon Jovi knew what his audience wanted and he knew how to deliver. So know your audience. How do they like to receive messages? Are you working with someone or communicating with somebody who prefers a quick phone call, an instant message, or they prefer an email? And if it's an email, do they want 3 bullet points? Do they want a lot of detail? Understand how the recipient wants the information and be able to adapt your style in each individual situation. Our second strategy is to listen actively. And active listening means listening on purpose. So how do you do this? Some techniques that you can use. First, I will say, give the speaker your full and undivided attention. Be prepared to listen and remove distractions from the environment. Prior to most things going fully remote in 2020, I would have said I was a good active listener and I was great at giving my full attention. And I quickly figured out that that wasn't the case. Think about working remote, I'd be having a conversation with somebody on that screen in front of me, but I had 2 other monitors and instant messages would be popping up on one, emails would be popping up on the other, my phone would be buzzing, and I was not giving that person my full undivided attention. So I learned when I was going to have conversations one-on-one or with my team where I really needed to focus, turn off the extra monitors, put the phone in a drawer, remove those distractions from my environment. Also, avoid the temptation to interrupt with your own thoughts. And don't be preoccupied thinking about your response instead of listening. So if the person says something and you immediately thinking about how you are going to respond, you are no longer listening to the rest of what they have to say. So instead, what I do is I make a note, 1 or 2 words about something I want to come back to at the end of the conversation. But that allows me to know I won't forget it, but I can still pay attention to that person. And then that comes to, wrapping up, clarifying. When it is your turn to speak, ask those questions, circle back to the items you've noted, and also restate or summarize what they've said to make sure that you really are on the same page, that what I heard is really what that person said, so we can walk away with a mutual understanding. And active listening builds trust. It shows that you value others' opinions. Our third strategy is to have the right attitude. And I will say this is not like rainbows, unicorns, and puppies. You don't have to be positive all of the time. What I mean by this is to have an open-minded attitude. And instead of asking yourself, what's in it for me? Ask, how can I help? What information does this person need to achieve their goal? And how can we work together successfully? This is a great time to practice empathy. So put yourself in another person's shoes and work to understand their perspective. It demonstrates respect for others' viewpoints. And having this ability to communicate with an open mind also continues to help you build that relationship. And finally, feedback and adaptation. And this is specific to your communication strategies. So as you are working on a strategy, seek feedback from someone that you trust. If you decide that you want to improve your active listening skills and that there's something very specific you are going to work on in the next 2 to 4 weeks, have a trusted team member observe you. And at the end of the time period, get their feedback. See how you are doing and are there changes that you can incorporate to continue to improve your effective communication. So we've talked about leading by example and effective communication. Lynn, what other strategies would you suggest someone, to someone who's looking to grow their skills?
All right, let's talk about a big one to me, self-awareness. And I told Tanya when we were putting all of this together and I saw self-awareness, I was telling her a story about when I first started in improving, Tanya was my boss. And when we talk about what do you want out of this company, where do you think you want to go? We talked about, what path would you take inside this company? And I said, well, I think I'd like to, I'd like to be on the leadership team someday. And she asked me a one-word question, which was so important. And it sent me into a lot of, okay, I really need to understand myself better, my motivations. She said, why? I thought, oh, that's such a good question. It's not, well, what are you looking for? Or what's this or that? Or do you want to manage people? Blah, blah, blah. It was just a simple why. And I took that away and spent some time thinking about what was my motivation behind it? Was it title, money? And I realized, those things are nice. I love watching people grow in this industry. I've been in it a long time and I'm just enjoying watching what goes on now. I think the energy of people coming in now, younger people, is incredible. They're incredibly smart and they just don't realize that there's a lot of paths that they can take to, to have a really happy, wonderful career. So that's my homage to Tanya. There we go. But self-awareness is the ability to understand yourself. All right, so let's a little bit more about self-awareness. So how do you get there? What do you do? Well, first of all, reflect on maybe a past job where you thought, boy, this is about the happiest I've been in my career. What was I doing at the time? Was I, how was I leading? Think about your leadership skills at the time. Maybe you're leading a dev team. Maybe you were working closely with other people and you just love that collaborative spirit. Some people love it. Some people hate it. But what makes you happy? A lot of people get into a job because it's the next move in the company, but it's not the right move for them. So this is a really, really important one for me because I know it in my career early on, that's the way it was. You did, level 1, 2, 3. And then if you were a technician, you couldn't be a technician where you had to be a manager and you had to manage people. Well, they're finding now that that's just not so great. And Kim Scott, in her book Radical Candor, talks about rock stars and superstars, about people who can lead at their level and people who want to keep going up the ladder and lead at a bunch of different levels. And the next one is assessment. Do an assessment. Maybe you've done strength finders or DISC or things like that. Put all those together. They do tell a story when you look at them. And we have all those classes here, and it's amazing how you look at these and think, oh, individualism is really important to me, and I'm a high I. So, I like to interact with people and I like to see them as individuals and, whatever, what is it, the Myers-Briggs test and all the other tests that are out there. So just take a look at some of that stuff. Maybe talk to people who know you and say, what do you think my strongest trait? And then authenticity. A lot of times we see a leader that we like. Maybe if it's even, a famous leader, maybe it's, Elon Musk. I don't know why, but maybe Elon Musk. Maybe it's Steve Jobs. Maybe it's somebody like that. And you think that's the kind of leader I want to be. But then you start looking at their characteristics like, well, I don't really like to do that part of it or that part of it. So if you try to be someone else, the one thing you're not being is you. So you do you, as a friend of mine says. And then last thing on the list here is feedback. Really, really important. And so what you want to do with feedback is don't make it quick. Don't go, so what do you think of me? Look for people who have your best interest at heart. There's a lot of people that know you, but look for people that know you well and are willing to be upfront with you. And that when we talked about trust, that you trust. And give them time. Tell them specifically what kind of feedback you're looking for. I'm looking to do this job, and I'd like you to just take a little time and think about it. And then can we find some time together and talk about what you think, how you think I'd be at that job. And I'm also thinking about this other thing, and I'm kind of torn between the two. So look for people that will really give you good feedback on an opportunity to grow. And then all that active listening comes in. take in everything that they're telling you and be prepared, take notes. Some of it may take some legwork from you as to, oh, I need to check it. Do I really do that? You know, I haven't noticed that in myself. And then just be open to all those messages that you hear and, you know, follow back with them. And if you have any questions, feedback is very, very important. And it really, as hard as it is sometimes, it's a gift if you get it from the right people.
Great point. Okay, so we have covered a great deal of information in a short time. And I will say, if you take only one thing away from everything that we've said today, it's important to remember that leadership traits are not magical, mythical qualities that are bestowed on a select few at birth. Leadership traits can be developed. So, what are you going to do to grow your leadership skills? When developing your own action plan, what will you adopt? And to help you, what we want to do is take the next, say, 2 to 3 minutes for you to reflect on one trait that you want to focus on in the next 2 weeks and something actionable that you can do. And then we are going to ask you to share. So we'll give you, I have a clock here. I think I can see, yes, 2 minutes. And, or when you finish with your thought on what one thing you're committing to working on, put it in the chat. I feel like we should have had Jeopardy music.
I was thinking rock and roll, but yes. I see Omer's got active listening on there. That's yep. And Armando. Sounds like everybody wants to listen better. That's a huge one. I was in a coaching class one time where they had you listen to somebody talk to you until they were done, basically, but you had to wait 5 minutes before you could answer them. So you had to really get rid of all the stuff in your head and think about what they said.
Mm-hmm. It's a great skill to develop. And it's something I will say, I think I constantly work on. Like I will not ever say I've achieved it. It's just a work in progress.
Yeah.
Do we have any others that have popped up in chat?
I think we're ready to, what? Oh, good one. Liz had, she was thinking about deliberating and being intentional and critical thinking and responsiveness. Nice.
I love that. Yes.
Take the time, definitely. All right.
If there are no others, I'll move on, but I don't want to cut people short if anybody wants to throw a last one in there.
I think Thomas said listening skills, inspiring change for better team collaboration.
Awesome. Thank you. And now we're going to open it up to questions. See if anybody has any questions about anything related to this presentation. Is it because it's lunch hour and everybody's like, if I don't ask questions, I can go eat quickly?
I don't think you want to talk with a full mouth either.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. All right.
Anything popping up there?
I've just got maybe. All right, let's move on.
Okay, well then I'm gonna throw out a question because the next slide is gonna show you how many bands, artists, songs, or lyric references we had in the presentation. I want to know is some people put your numbers in the chat because before I show the slide, I want to see who gets the closest. So how many did you capture?
Let's see, 12, 14. Oh, God, awesome. We got anywhere from 9 to 14.
All
Nice.
right, we are going to the next slide. There are actually 21 references throughout that. Some of them we used twice. I believe the boss got used a couple times. I think Imagine got used a couple times. So if you only counted it once, we actually put it twice on this list. But
Yeah.
anyhow, it's a little fun for you. And before we wrap up, I do want to encourage you all to join the Improving Talk next week, April 3rd. Randall will be talking about leading with purpose and a guide to delegation. I know he will be talking about some collaborative tools that you can use. And talking about delegation and the importance of autonomy and motivation in fostering team performance. So it'll be the same time next week. Get signed up. And thank you all.
Thanks everybody for taking your lunch with us.